to go live over there on YouTube. There we go. All right. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. And session number 2. We are going to get started this morning. Um, we have a wonderful presenter. His name is Tim Jones, and Tim is from the great state of Kentucky, and he is a high school librarian. He's going to present on the topic of teaching media literacy using graphic novels. Now, I'm really interested in hearing this one because I'm a big media literacy teacher, so I love talking about this topic. So I'm going to just let Tim take it away. All right.
All right, nice to meet you guys. I am Tim Jones. I'm school librarian from Kentucky. I present on graphic novels and media literacy at uh, AASL and ALA. This presentation is based on my July Booklist article, which I'm working on fleshing out into a book. For a longer version of this presentation, contact me. The presentation was originally developed for 50 minutes. For updates on my professional writings or check out other PDs that I offer, check out my site at the bit.ly on the screen or the QR code. And please follow me on Twitter at Mr. Library. So, as we know, teens are um, prolific media consumers, but they're not savvy media consumers. A famous 2016 Stanford University study revealed uh, that young people regularly accept dubious online claims without thinking critically. So students fall well short of some of the most basic media literacy skills needed to navigate a 21st century media landscape, where misinformation and disinformation spread with frightening ease. Compounding the issue, most educators have received little to no professional development in how to teach media literacy. Many educators have adopted the mindset that media literacy is not their responsibility. A surprisingly effective approach, however, to teaching media literacy that might surprise you, the versatility to work effectively across the curriculum is the multimodality of the graphic novel. Now, what does multimodality mean? It's defined as the application of multiple literacies within one medium. Because graphic novels feature multiple literacies, textual, visual, spatial, within its medium, it is multimodal. So the 21st century media landscape, it bursts with multimodality, making the graphic novel a natural medium to foster media literacy skills. Due to its popularity and its multimodality qualities, the graphic novel can be a game changer uh, and also bridge the gap in understanding any content area. So, um, multimodality can be seen on a daily basis in our lives, from film to TV to video games to text messages to maps, websites, infographics, social media. Follow me on social media at Mr. Library, and memes, as well as assembling instructions. All of these have a visual component to them that students need to be able to be visually literate to be able to comprehend the world around them. And the graphic novel mirrors this 21st century visual media landscape more closely than any other reading format. As such, the graphic novel medium not only fosters and informs visual literacy, but media literacy as well. A graphic novel title exists for about every content area, and visuals, studies show, help us to remember. That's why I've tried to make this PowerPoint or this presentation as visually stimulating as possible. Since graphic novels can seamlessly be embedded across a curriculum, there's no reason why media literacy skills can't be reinforced across the curriculum using graphic novels. No subject content area must be sacrificed. Moreover, students will find these lessons more fun and engaging while better remembering their content. So, author Jianlun Yang is a beloved, award winning graphic novel author, but he's also a former math teacher. He taught some other subjects as well. I'm sure most of you are familiar with him. Here he is at a TED Talk. In his 2016 TED Talk, Yang spoke to how comic panels sit side by side on the page, allowing the reader to see past, present, and future all at once, which empowers readers to slow down, to reread, and process at their own speed. He said it was like I was giving them remote control over the information. He said of his math comic lectures that he created for his class. He had tried some video lectures and they didn't work as well, but the comic lectures worked extremely well. Because they were student paced, unlike the video lectures, the comic lectures were a hit more than his teacher paced video or in person lectures. Because they were visual, his math comics were more engaging than a textbook. And Yang now advocates for all educators to use comics. So here's an example of some panels from American Born Chinese. As you can see, um, there's permanence and a visual nature to these panels. A reader can easily rewind or pause as necessary to see past, present, and future all at once and determine meaning and what's happening from panel to panel, and kind of fill in the gaps or the gutters of what they think is happening between the panels. Before introducing graphic novels into the classroom, it's important to familiarize students with some essential elements. While many young people are familiar with a graphic novel format, not all of them will be. A review of basic terminology will ensure that everyone is on the same page, no pun intended, before the lesson. Before introducing graphic novels into the classroom, I would highly recommend teachers familiarizing their students with these six most essential elements of the medium: panels, speech balloons, captions, gutters, dot balloons, and framing. And they might be familiar with a few of these, but something like gutters or framing, they may not be as familiar with. So it's important to make sure that we're all on the same page before asking them to do something with it. Um, Here is a comic strip that I like to use to illustrate some of the most basic comics terminology. It includes those six plus a few others. Now, there are some other um, comic terminology that I think is important. Closure probably would be the next most popular, most important. Um, this is the way we use our prior knowledge to infer what happens between the panels. Uh, in other words, in the gutters. Um, for the purpose of promoting media literacy, um, I would really encourage teaching this concept, which Scott McCloud defines as the phenomenon of observing the parts but perceiving the whole. In these controversial panels from The Killing Joke, readers must draw on their prior knowledge of the characters and of the story being told to decide whether Joker has successfully caused Batman to finally snap. And there's all kinds of disagreement about what really happens among these panels. If there's more time, I would really highly encourage getting into some of these terms, but you could cut them if you had to. Those other six or seven, I think, are probably the most important. But depending on the time restraints, you might also acquaint them with these. Now, I want to talk about drawing, comics, but actually creating your own. Drawing itself has been shown to increase memory recall and information processing. In my 50-minute version of this presentation, I get into more of this and some of the benefits of drawing and graphic novels. Um, One thing that I've done in classes that I've taught is I try to get students comfortable with the idea of drawing. Not all students are comfortable with their drawing abilities. I'm not the best at drawing myself. Um, that doesn't mean that there's not merit to drawing. I encourage students that the quality of their drawing isn't as important as the thinking they bring into it. I like to incorporate icebreaker activities in my lessons through tools like whiteboard.fi. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but it's a Kahoot company. Uh, and you can put prompts in there and have them to draw simultaneously with the rest. And you can kind of see their it works as a form of assessment as you go along, but it also gets students comfortable with drawing in front of their peers and drawing for you. And again, I just encourage kids that it's more important that you're thinking about what you're drawing than the actual quality of the drawing. Here's an example of a lesson I did for media literacy. Once I got my student, I taught a communication skills class last year, and this was a lesson from the advertising techniques unit. I had them to distill a Super Bowl commercial into a comic of 6 to 8 panels, their choice, how many, and then represent and identify at least 2 advertising techniques. And so they watched some Super Bowl commercials, and this one student finally decided to do the one with Peyton Manning from this last Super Bowl and some other cameos. And after drawing it and trying to decide which images were the most important to persuading an audience and what kind of techniques were being used, this student identified 3 techniques: the testimonial, focal point, and repetition. But I did that only after getting them comfortable with the idea of drawing. But if you think your students can just jump right into it, you could do that as well. But just encourage them that, again, the most important thing is to be critically thinking about deconstructing and reconstructing whatever they're working with. Here's an example. Here's the actual assignment here. So I asked them to include at least a few different things, just so I could objectively grade it. I didn't really grade them on the quality of the work, but they, as long as they got the name of their product, service in, they got some of the terminology and using a speech bubble, thought bubble, caption, etc. And then they really thought about what advertising techniques were being involved. That's all I asked, and I just encourage them just to kind of have fun. I've also found that students become more personally invested in their learning when they're asked to draw, because I wasn't really even assessing them on the quality of their drawing. Despite that, I still found students who took a lot of time to work on their drawing and to make it good, because they took a lot of pride in. There's an intrinsic reward in showcasing their creativity. So they really enjoyed that lesson. That advertising techniques lesson could also be modified to news literacy or any other number of topics. So instead of adapting an advertisement to comic format, for example, this assignment could easily be modified for a short news or current event story if you want more of a news literacy focus. So once I've gotten them comfortable with the idea of drawing, I have had students, I've challenged students to create their own comics. Here's an example of another comic that a student did for the Super Bowl assignment. So I'm going to talk about 5 different challenges that you could challenge your students with, or help teachers work with teachers to work with them on a media literacy lesson that uses these kind of techniques. So teachers could challenge their students to tell the story of a background character from a lesson or a novel or graphic novel that the class has read. So even if they haven't read a graphic novel or they're not reading a graphic novel, if it's they're reading an excerpt from a history chapter, they could take a story of a background character and try to extrapolate that. When students write a comic from the perspective of a background character, it can activate more thought about the marginalized or about a perspective minimized in a story or a news report or a meme. Researchers have found that students' emotional empathy is more strongly activated by visual images than by written dialogue. Empathy can help reduce bias, which is more essential to media literacy than ever. Another challenge is you could challenge them to incorporate a character in their comic who breaks the fourth wall to comment on the technique the student artist is using to create a desired effect. By incorporating a fourth wall breaking character, and most of us think of like a Deadpool or a Spider Man, somebody like that who breaks fourth walls. But it could be any type of character that they want to have. By incorporating this kind of character, students are encouraged to actively consider how media messages are made, honing their critical thinking when engaging with the media. So it's kind of like they take a time out, they pause, and then they say, okay, so that last panel, in that last panel, we had a close up, and the close up we were doing this. So you can use that kind of time out from a character in their own comic to get them to think about also pausing when they're doing media literacy in their day to day lives. They can also you can also challenge students to create a short comic that fills in the gaps of the gutter between two panels. So you have a box and another box; those are panels, and that space in between the panels, those are called gutters. Um, Sometimes a lot of time can pass between those two panels, and sometimes a short amount of time. Sometimes new characters come in. Sometimes there's a change in setting. There's lots of things that can happen in that gutter. Same thing with news reports. Lots of things can happen between one cut and another, or a lot of things that are left out in a story as a news outlet decides what kind of story they want to focus on. So you can have them just create a short comic that fills in the gaps of the gutter between two panels. Um, Readers are constantly making inferences about how much time has passed between panels when they're reading a graphic novel, and we as media consumers are constantly making inferences about what's going on between cuts. But maybe we don't do that as much as when we're slowing down and we're reading. Um, so I think this is a really helpful challenge for students to encourage them to think critically about gutters and also improve their media literacy skills. You could encourage them to create a TikTok style comic. I know Erica Long talked about uh, TikTok, and so kind of piggybacking on her presentation, you could have them create a TikTok style comic incorporating thought bubbles for a main character and symbols for music samples. Um, Most students at a high school level, at least, are familiar with TikTok, so they could base their comic on an existing TikTok, or they could imagine their own TikTok. They could create their own either in the app or just on the page. And in their comic, students can integrate thought bubbles for the main character and symbols for music samples. Um, really, asking students to recreate the social media medium as a comic forces them to slow down again and more richly understand how social media influencers are successfully targeting them. Another challenge is you could challenge students to create a comic project instead of a video project. Video projects are very popular, but you could also do a comic project. Um, Creating a comic instead of producing a video can take less class time, freeing up time for more content. I love creating video projects, uh, but sometimes you don't have to always do the video project. You can do a comic project, and that activates in them a lot more metacognition where they're thinking about the actual process and what they're doing. So, besides comic creation, here are some other frameworks that can be used to teach media literacy skills using graphic novels. You can pair selected panels from a graphic novel with a meme or a manipulated image or other online media. It doesn't have to be an entire graphic novel. You can just use a few selected panels, like I showed from the Killing Joke a little bit ago. You can have students analyze and discuss literary elements such as theme, point of view, characterization, foreshadowing, motif, imagery for each. Or you could draw in any other terminology or definitions or terms from whatever the content area is and have them uh, kind of uh, discuss that and really wrestle with it. Here are some other guiding questions um, as you are asking students to really think about the panels or the graphic novel. These are some guiding questions that also work to help them think about how they are breaking down and critically thinking about media that they're consuming. So, what values and points of view are included in the meme or the news story, which are excluded? What information is left out of this message that might be important to know? Who holds the power in the scene? Are there any visual cues, like looking at their faces? I mean, like if you look at this comic woman, like if you look at her face, you can kind of get a sense of like what she's, you know, what she's thinking. Um, Symbols, framing. Uh, how do these visual cues reinforce the power dynamic? Just kind of getting them to really think and slow down and process images at a slower pace with graphic novels or something that they've drawn themselves so that they have practice when they are seeing it coming at them a million miles per hour on their screen, on their phone, on the TV. Is the narrator reliable? What visual cues corroborate your interpretation? Those are some other good guiding questions. Is the overarching message presented as fact, opinion, or something else? What types of objects are used to create tone? Um, a lot of times we don't even think about the objects that are on the screen. We just think in terms of like, well, what's that talking head saying? But objects in the scene themselves can create tone. Um, and what techniques are used? Why were those techniques used? How did they communicate that message? I use those sort of guiding questions in my advertising techniques lesson. So I didn't know if I would be able to get through this entire presentation in 25 minutes because it was originally 50. Um, but I cut out a lot. If you want to know see more, just touch base with me at my Bitly website, or you can email me. You can scan this information. Um, does anybody have any questions?
I think you answered everything, but there was a questions about what are gutters, framing, and they were asking about where would you find suggestions for multiple genres for age K two, nonfiction, history, and biography, and the fourth wall. I think you pretty much covered all that, right?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So we caught it all.
Awesome, awesome.
All right. Well, I want you all. We have about a minute left. Give Tim some love in the chat. Let him know how much you appreciate his presentation. And I'm going to pop these messages on the screen so everyone can see this because this was a wonderful session today. And I know presenting in 25 minutes is pretty rough, but you got it done.
Thank you, guys.
Ooh, I can't keep up. They're coming in so fast. All righty. I'm going to give you guys another 5 minutes so you can head off to your next session. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Tim, for your time today and volunteering your time and presenting today. This was great. Thank you, thank you, thank you once again. And everyone, we'll see you in the next session. Take care. Bye bye.